Hello, my name is Noah Garcia,
My name is Elizabeth Dupont.
and for our project area, we're giving Southeast Texas, which is the Beaumont Port Arthur area, and this is going to be our State of the Community report. Also included in this report are Chi Huang, Ao DeSote, and Kirti Roth.
In this State of the Community report, we intend to provide information that can help to guide how planning projects are chosen and developed to best serve the community of the Beaumont-Port Arthur Metropolitan Statistical Area. This is a major metro area for Southeast Texas on the Gulf Coast of the United States. It borders Louisiana to the east. It contains Hardin County, Jefferson County, and Orange County. Newton County was briefly considered part of the BPA MSA between 2013 and 2018. The major places include Beaumont, Port Arthur, and Orange. Beaumont is the largest population with 112,559 people. The next largest is Port Arthur with a population of 54,705. And the third largest is Orange with 18,458 as of the 2020 census. These three cities make up the Golden Triangle, which constitutes the economic center for the region. The region overall was first settled between the 1830s and 1840s. In 1901, the Spindletop oil field was discovered outside of Beaumont, and oil extraction and refining became the major industry in the region. This legacy continues to today with the largest oil refinery in the US, the Motiva Enterprises LLC, being located in Port Arthur. It produces 626,000 barrels a day as of January 2022, according to the US Energy Information Administration.
So as far as the census data collection methodologies go, the United States Census Bureau uses a simple random sampling strategy where about 1% to 2% of addresses in the entire United States are sampled. The BLS states, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, states that the American Community Survey utilizes a randomly selected sample of about 3.5 million addresses each year and is intended to be representative of the United States population. The sample size is chosen so that there's a 90% confidence interval or about a 2.5% margin of error. Years ending in 0 will have no margin of error because the decennial census counts every household in the US without a sampling method. However, surveys not present on the short form, so more intricate things like how long does it take you to travel to work, are not included on the short form. So those will still be based on ACS sampling method estimates.
So the planning organizations that are present in this area are the Metropolitan Planning Organization that are present in this area are the Southeast Texas Regional Planning Commission, which covers the Tri-Counties region of Hardin, Jefferson, and Orange counties. And also the major places have comprehensive plans. This includes Beaumont, Port Arthur, and Orange. Jasper County is also included in the SETRPC, but is not considered a part of the Beaumont-Port Arthur MSA. From this figure here, we can see that back in 2003, the Beaumont thought its population was going to grow to approximately 137,434. But our ACS data from 2020 shows that the actual population was 112,559. This highlights how the projections can over or underestimate population size depending on how those numbers are calculated, and also on how intervening variables can change the growth rate over time.
So some notes on our projection methods here is that a jump and drop in the observed population was found, like we said earlier, due to Newton County's addition to the Beaumont-Port Arthur MSA from 2013 to 2018. So this threw off some of our numbers, especially when it came to calculations. To correct these biases, the observed population from 2013 to 2018 for Beaumont-Port Arthur metropolitan area was minus the population of Newton County. So what we did was we just like removed it from the analysis. The share of growth method and shift share method assumed that the growth rate in Texas and Beaumont-Port Arthur would be similar. However, the growth rate in Texas is around 6 times higher than it is in Beaumont, Port Arthur. So the population projection based on the share of growth and shift share might be overestimated. So here we can see the top figure shows the population projection with Newton County included, where we see a really big spike between 2013 to 2018, and then a huge drop off in 2018. So unfortunately, Beaumont has been unable to keep up the pace of its expectations that we saw in the last slide. And the actual population projections were thrown off by Newton County, like we said. So in the bottom map, or in the bottom projection here, we can see how Beaumont Port Arthur has grown without the inclusion of Newton County inside the MSA. So we can see it takes a much more gradual approach. The population has increased since 2010, but it has been declining in more recent years. So our projections predict that the population will continue to grow within the next couple years. So the Beaumont Port Arthur MSA is an older population compared to Texas at large. The median age of Beaumont Port Arthur is 37.2 years old, where women overtake men as the majority sex at age 55. So typically we'll see in younger populations, the amount of women becomes greater than the amount of men at younger ages. So in Beaumont Port Arthur, it's at an older age than it is for the rest of Texas, which has a median age of 34.8, and women overtake men as the majority sex at age 45. In the US, which is where we see a lot more trends that Beaumont falls in line with, or that Beaumont Port Arthur falls in line with, the median age is 38.1 years old. And we see that the US has a higher percentage of men than women below 35 years old, but a higher percentage of women than men over the age of 35. So we can see here in our figures that a lot of these are the changes between 2010 on the left and 2020 on the right. We see that there's a lot more younger people within Texas than there are within the United States at large. And then when we go over to the next slide, we can see the ones for Beaumont Port Arthur. And then below, we also included figures for Louisiana, which is the state that the Beaumont Port Arthur metro statistical area borders directly. We can see a lot of these trends within Beaumont are actually more similar to the US and Louisiana than they are to Texas at large. And we discussed this is probably due to the fact that much of the growth within Texas has been within the Texas Triangle between Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, and Houston. So Beaumont is kind of left out of this, or the whole Golden Triangle really is kind of left out of this trend, where it falls more in line with other peripheral places in Texas. So as far as the racial and ethnic makeup go, Beaumont Port Arthur mostly follows trends from neighboring Louisiana, as well as the United States at large. It has a large Black or African American population, and a small but growing Hispanic and Latino population, as well as a shrinking white population, which is something that we've seen across much of the United States within the past 10 years. So we can see here in the lighter colors are 2010 populations, and then in the darker colors are 2020 populations, with blue is US, red is Texas, and green is Beaumont Port Arthur. So we can see it has a really big spike within the Black or African American population, much larger than any of the other two areas that we looked at. And it also has a shrinking white population, which is similar across the board for all of them. And then if we go to the bottom, we can see the Hispanic or Latino population, which is a lot higher for Texas, but Beaumont Port Arthur once again falls more in line with the United States at large. The other populations are all relatively small, but we can see that it also has a smaller population of Asian residents than other areas at large, so less than Texas and less than the United States.
This figure describes the number and types of jobs in Beaumont Port Arthur from 2002 to 2019. The number increased from 2019, reaching a peak in 2010, and then started to decline in all job fields, or all job types. The drop in number is similar to the decreasing population in 2018 from previous slide. The private jobs accounted for 83% of all jobs in 2002. The proportion increased to 85% by 2020. However, if we look at public jobs, they are consistent over the 18 years.
When we looked at the economic inflow and outflow, which we'll see in the next slide, we saw that in 2010, with 160,674 jobs, 52,759 people moved into the MSA, which is 48% of the total. So that's saying 52,759 people came into the MSA for work on a regular basis. 48,706 people, which is 45% of the total number of jobs, were outflow jobs. So people left the MSA to go to work, even though they lived there normally. In 2019, the number of jobs decreased to 150,341, and 46,003 people moved into the MSA, which is 44% of total. So that number has dropped a little bit from the 2010, and then 57,082 people moved out of the MSA for work, which is 45%, which is about in line with where it was before. It's just a larger number because the population has increased. So if we look here at the figure at the top, we can see on the left side, represented in the blue, is the total population of the MSA. And on the right side, represented in the brown, is the total number of employment. So we can see it took a pretty big hit in 2020, which is kind of to be expected with the pandemic and everything. While populations remained mostly increasing, jobs have been much more fluid in whether they're increasing or decreasing from year to year. So here's those economic inflow and outflow maps. On the left is the 2010 map, and on the right is the, backwards. On the left is the 2019 map, and on the right is the 2010 map. So we can see that population, it increased overall, so the numbers are bigger, but the proportions are about the same for the amount of people that left the MSA in both slides, but the amount of people that came in decreased in 2020 or in 2019 compared to 2010.
So the location quotients were determined by comparing Beaumont Port Arthur to Texas as of 2019. The 2022 data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics was used to derive the location quotient of the MSA, and with that was used to calculate the location quotient. The construction and manufacturing remained the most prominent industries in the MSA. For example, the location quotient for the information sector is 0.377, implying that the Beaumont Port Arthur MSA is not self-sufficient in providing information services, whereas the healthcare and social assistance sector, the MSA provides enough with a location quotient of 1.043. So these figures were taken from the Texas Economic Development Corporation, which examines economic development over the entire state of Texas. This was done for the Beaumont Port Arthur area of economic development specifically. It shows that the highest competitive advantage is in construction and manufacturing, specifically related to oil and gas. And the other industries that are also competitive are mining, utilities, and education and health services.
So some conclusions of the economic analysis are that Port Arthur is home to the world's largest oil refinery. Major employers include ENG Global Corporation, ExxonMobil, Goodyear Tire and Rubber, Motiva Enterprises, and Valero Refining Groups, which are all major oil and rubber businesses in the US. So there's also, what makes it a great area for these types of industries is that there's 3 foreign trade zones, several major highways, and a regional airport, rail serviced by multiple Class 1 carriers, and the proximity to the Port of Houston connect Beaumont, Port Arthur to global commerce quickly, reliably, and affordably. Major business clusters in the Beaumont, Port Arthur area include chemical and petroleum manufacturing, like we talked about, materials manufacturing, and transportation. The area also is serviced by 3 colleges and universities, which can train the local population to deepen the area's talent pipeline. And although steadily declining over the past couple of years, the unemployment rate for the Beaumont-Port Arthur area is consistently higher than both the state and national averages. So what we're seeing here is a mismatch of skills versus the skill set of the existing workforce, which results in that higher unemployment rate than average. Employers have expressed that this lack of soft skills, work readiness skills, and the motivation of the workforce are of great concern and a hindrance to the employer's ability to fill job openings and retain employees.
So the social vulnerability index is much higher in the Beaumont-Port Arthur MSA than the surrounding area. Many of the hotspots indicated in dark blue may be related to mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction industries. These industries have a high risk of illness from environmental factors and also risk of injury that might prevent a person from being able to work, which then puts them into a higher social risk category.
As far as economic connectedness goes, the economic connectedness is calculated based on the difference of salary. So what we're really seeing in Beaumont-Port Arthur is that there's a lack of diversity in salaries. There's not a whole ton of really high paying jobs or a ton of really low paying jobs. It's just a lot of jobs that pay about the same. We can see that on the grade scale down here between the like 90th percentile of operators who or dragline operators and the 10th percentile of dragline operators. It's only about $20 that separate them in total. So there's generally low economic connectedness in Beaumont-Port Arthur just because everyone is within a similar tax bracket, basically. The average value of economic connectedness is around 25, which may be caused by the small range of salaries. The social vulnerability index and economic connectedness index are inverse in the MSA due to the characteristics and types of industries in the area. So mining, quarrying, and oil all are major industries which have a high risk of on-the-job and long-term illness from the environment that you're working in. You know, they're dangerous places and dangerous jobs, which could result in injury. And so this high risk contributes to the high social vulnerability. While much of the workforce also has similar salaries, so they have a low rate of economic connectedness.
So the Beaumont-Port Arthur MSA is going to be coming to a turning point here in the next few decades. Oil and gas continue to be the primary job creating industries in the area, but due to the shrinking relevance of oil and gas in the light of a move towards sustainable technologies and the fact that it is a resource that is finite, it might become too expensive to access or inaccessible. And at present investment levels, the BPA may continue to grow, but oil and gas will most likely begin to become less relevant. The population is relatively old, but with a new influx of younger population or maintaining and retaining their young population that they already have, they could be able to grow further in the future. Healthcare and education are potential industries that could become more prominent in the region and become the main economic drivers that will keep them economically viable.